The Season 3 premiere of Lioness completely changed the rules of the game. For the first time since the series began, Jo isn't simply leading dangerous missions across the globe. The war has followed her home, proving that her enemies are no longer afraid to strike where it hurts the most. Now, Episode 2 is set to raise the stakes even higher. The official synopsis may be only a single sentence, but it hints at a conspiracy much larger than anyone expected. Kaitlyn races to contain a crisis spiraling across agencies as Neil tries to steady rising fear at home. At first glance, that description seems simple. But when you connect it to everything that happened in Episode 1, it becomes absolutely terrifying. Because this isn't just another mission. This is the beginning of a war that could expose weaknesses at the highest levels of American intelligence. Today, we're breaking down every clue from the official synopsis, the Season 3 premiere, and the latest preview to predict exactly what could happen next. And trust me, one hidden detail may reveal why Jo's family was attacked in the first place. So stay with me until the end because the final prediction could completely change how we see the rest of Season 3. Before we look ahead, let's talk about why episode may first have been the most important premiere Lioness has ever delivered. For 2 seasons, we've watched Jo McNamara carry out impossible missions around the world. She's faced ruthless enemies, survived impossible situations, and made decisions that most people could never imagine. But despite everything she's endured, there was always one line her enemies never crossed. Her family. That changed in the closing moments of Episode 1. The attack outside Jo's home wasn't random. It wasn't a warning shot. It was a carefully planned message. Someone wanted Jo to understand that nowhere, not even her own home, is safe anymore. That's exactly what makes Episode 2 feel so different from anything we've seen before. Because once an intelligence officer becomes personally involved, emotions begin influencing decisions. And emotions are dangerous. Especially in Jo's profession. But here's where things become even more interesting. Who actually ordered the attack? At first, many viewers assumed the attackers were simply seeking revenge for Jo's latest mission. That certainly seems possible. Jo has spent years eliminating dangerous targets around the world, and eventually someone was bound to strike back. But what if that's exactly what the writers want us to believe? Taylor Sheridan rarely tells straightforward stories. His shows thrive on deception. Every season begins with one obvious explanation, only to reveal something far more complicated later. That brings us to one of the biggest questions heading into Episode 2. What if Jo wasn't the real target? Think about it. The attackers chose Jo's home. But they also knew exactly when to strike. That suggests planning. Intelligence. Surveillance. Those aren't qualities of ordinary criminals. They're qualities of professionals. Professionals who had access to information they should never have possessed. Which immediately raises another disturbing possibility. Someone inside the intelligence community may have helped them. And if that's true, Jo isn't just fighting terrorists anymore. She may be hunting a traitor. That's exactly where Kaitlyn enters the story. The official synopsis tells us Kaitlyn is racing to contain a crisis spreading across multiple agencies. Notice the wording. It doesn't say she's responding to one incident. It says the crisis is spreading. That suggests something much bigger than a single failed operation. If multiple agencies are becoming involved, then this conspiracy reaches far beyond the Lioness program. It could involve classified intelligence. Compromised operatives. Or even national security itself. Kaitlyn has always been one of the calmest people in the room. She rarely panics. She rarely raises her voice. She sees the bigger picture before anyone else. Which is why seeing her scramble to contain this situation tells us everything we need to know. Whatever happened in Episode 1, it's worse than most characters realize. And Episode May 2 finally explain why. But while Kaitlyn fights political battles, Jo faces something even harder. Protecting the people she loves. One of the reasons Jo has remained such a compelling character is because she's constantly balancing 2 completely different worlds. At work, she's fearless, decisive, relentless. At home, she's simply a wife and a mother trying to hold her family together despite the impossible demands of her career. Those two worlds have always existed separately. Now they've collided. That changes everything. Imagine walking into your own home knowing someone has already watched your family, studied their routines, learned their weaknesses. Even after surviving the attack, Jo can't truly relax. Because she knows something most people never experience. If her enemies found her once, they can find her again. That creates constant psychological pressure. Every unfamiliar car becomes suspicious. Every unexpected phone call feels dangerous. Every knock on the door becomes a potential threat. Those aren't just physical dangers. They're emotional ones. And emotional pressure often breaks even the strongest people. The question is, will it break Jo? Or will it make her even more dangerous? The answer may depend on one man, Neil. For much of the series, Neil has represented normal life. He's the reminder of everything Jo is fighting to protect. But episode 2 finally pushes him into the center of the story. The official synopsis says Neil tries to calm growing fear at home. That single sentence carries enormous emotional weight. Because while Jo is trained to handle danger, Neil isn't. He's suddenly responsible for keeping his family together while knowing the people hunting Jo may return at any moment. That's an impossible burden. Yet it may also become Neil's defining moment. Sometimes courage isn't found on the battlefield. Sometimes courage means protecting your family even when you're terrified yourself. Episode 2 could reveal an entirely different side of Neil. A stronger, more determined, more resilient version we've never seen before. And if that happens, the McNamara family may become stronger than ever. Unfortunately, their enemies are becoming stronger too. What makes an enemy truly dangerous? Is it their weapons? Their training? Or is it their ability to stay invisible until it's too late? That is the question hanging over every scene as we move into episode 2. Jo McNamara has spent her entire career hunting enemies who operate in the shadows, but this time, the shadows seem to be following her. The attack on her home wasn't simply a tactical strike. It was psychological warfare. It was designed to force Jo into making emotional decisions, and that's exactly what her enemies are counting on. The biggest challenge for Jo won't be surviving another gunfight. It will be resisting the urge to abandon protocol in pursuit of revenge. That's a dangerous line for any intelligence officer to cross because the moment emotion begins leading the mission, mistakes become inevitable. But Jo has never been an ordinary operative. Throughout the series, we've watched her make impossible decisions under unbearable pressure. She has sacrificed friendships, relationships, and pieces of herself to complete missions that most agents would never survive. Every operation has left scars, but those scars also made her stronger. Episode May 2 finally answer an important question. How dangerous is Jo when she has nothing left to lose? That possibility should terrify anyone standing in her way. Because history has shown that the most effective operatives aren't the ones driven by anger. They're the ones driven by purpose. And Jo's purpose has never been clearer. Whoever threatened her family must be found, no matter the cost. But while Jo prepares for war, someone else may already be controlling the battlefield. One of the most fascinating aspects of Lioness is that the real villains rarely reveal themselves immediately. Taylor Sheridan prefers building tension through uncertainty. Every conversation feels layered. Every new character seems capable of hiding another agenda. That storytelling style makes episode 2 incredibly unpredictable. The official synopsis tells us Kaitlyn is dealing with a crisis spreading across multiple agencies. Think about that for a moment.